Well, hello there, DJ. How are you, my friend?
I am doing great, Alex. How are you? Aside, I'm seeing a lot of baby stuff in the background. Maybe some interesting life changes going on.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You notice some things never change there. There's a sword in the
Hmm.
corner here. That's Glamdring, Gandalf's sword.
Yep.
And I've got my Alvarez Masterwork guitar just next to me. So I'm kind of
Nice.
sharing the man cave with my 1 month old son at the moment.
Mhm.
And we're all just praying that he chooses to be a writer when he's older.
Do you? Because then
No,
then you
no,
you
we
kind
don't
of
really.
pay for university and it never gets paid back, right?
Oh
I mean,
God, that's
let's
right.
hope he's a dentist.
Yeah, yeah,
You can be the
absolutely,
writer.
absolutely. But it's my wife's a tremendous painter,
Okay.
and she does like these wonderful animals like badgers and pigs and stuff. So we're hoping he's going to pick up
Some
some
kind
of
of
the
artistic
creative.
bent. Yeah.
But welcome, welcome. This is the 21 Futures Financial Fallout podcast. This is the first for the series of the new anthology because there was the previous one, Tales from the Time Chain, that I recommend people check out. And we're here with you, a not just a published writer in the anthology, but a prize winner as well with your story, The Big Slash.
Mhm.
So before we talk about the story itself, DJ, tell me, a lot of our writers in the group, and we have a wonderful Telegram group that everyone should join. We'll find a way to put a link on here. A lot of our writers are interested both in finance and this kind of dystopia that is a little bit like stranger than fiction these days. It's sort of almost becoming a reality, isn't it?
Mhm.
Um, and then that nice crossover between that and wanting to tell stories. Would you tell us a little bit about your personal interest in these topics?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm actually more of a progressive than a dystopian guy, and I remember stories like Song of Ice and Fire,
Mhm.
or The Sopranos, or stories basically where this is not going to end well. Breaking
Sure.
Bad, right? Award
Yeah,
winning, amazing, could
yeah.
not get through it. Because ultimately, I think for me, when you get these stories like 1984, right? The ending is
Mhm.
just appalling. Um,
Oh, I love it. I love
when
it.
but when you get that story, right, it's counter to life
Sure.
because life ultimately progresses. And so I get that as science fiction writers and as fiction writers in general and as thinkers, we are
Mhm.
supposed to look at bad things in the world and tell people, look, I know this is not a priority for you right now. You've got a 1 month old son and he's taken over your office. And maybe, the economic future that's going to happen in 20, 30 years is not a huge priority for you. But this is how bad it could get.
Sure, sure.
And and I think if I look at Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, for example, it's a great example of the world gone wrong, but
Mhm.
she individually progresses.
Sure.
And so, what I need in a story like that is I'm fine with the world burning, but
Yeah.
my protagonist has to find a way out of it, has to progress. It can't just be doom and gloom forever, or I'm just
That's
going to
that is fascinating. You know why? Because I text. So me and my dad, we have this wonderful relationship where we can talk about books,
Mhm.
right? And in the first lockdown in the UK, I read every dystopia in the bloody world, right, all
Okay.
the way back to We by Yevgeny Zamyatin.
Mhm.
And I text my dad and I just said, I'm going to keep reading one until the good guys win.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, you're going to be reading for a while.
Yeah.
But that's interesting because what you're talking about here is, are you going to be the guy that sort of creates the happy ending for dystopia? Because what
Yeah.
we
I mean,
wanted, sorry to
no,
interrupt
go
you
for
there,
it.
but what we talked about in this court of submissions was actually that little glimmer of hope, right? That little
Yeah,
spark
I
of
do remember
hope.
that.
Yeah, and I think you're going to be the guy that nails it, huh?
Well, I don't know if happy is the goal, right? I think I'm definitely fine with the idea of realpolitik. I was a Marine. I studied international relations and whatnot. So I'm
Mhm.
I'm I'm there for the realism and the grittiness. I think it's more down to whatever we as humans are doing, even down to the way we think, we're looking for meaning, right? We're looking for some sort of
Yeah,
progression,
yeah, of course.
and so again, if the end of the story is just going to be like we went through all this effort and everybody dies, why did I waste my time?
Interesting. Some would say the journey is more important than the destination, though, right? And also Rogue One, the Star Wars film, bit of a spoiler, they all die. Great film though.
They do, but they accomplish something, right? And actually, I
Oh,
really like that
I
one. I
see.
like the Book of Eli. I was on a panel with Hugh Howey, and he pointed out that both of those were written by the same writer, and maybe I just have a hard on for that writer.
Hugh Howey,
Um,
the Silo guy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, amazing,
Yeah,
amazing. His the Wool
yeah.
books, fantastic.
Also
But also
fantastic, right?
the Apple TV show
Yeah.
starring Rebecca Ferguson, who I am a personal fan of. My wife would not mind me saying. Um, it's very good. We're having a bit of a sort of sci-fi renaissance, aren't we? Do you think?
Well, it's become mainstream, and I
Right.
think it's because of great shows like, for example, the Star Trek movie reboot that kind of hopped on the Marvel vibe and made it
Sure.
accessible to everyone.
Mm.
And then going on to shows like The Expanse or Battlestar Galactica kind of brought
Oh,
that in.
that's one of my
Firefly.
favorites. Yeah.
So I think it's more that budgets have gone up. Like if you look at
Yeah.
the old Dune miniseries and you look at the stuff and you're like,
Mm.
but from there we went to Stargate, which I started rewatching that with my wife recently, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
well, uh,
SG-1. I
yeah,
didn't love Atlantis,
yeah,
but SG-1. Old school,
um,
old school. I think we've watched a lot of the same stuff.
yeah, exactly.
I used to love the X-Files.
Yeah, I
I
mean
still
that
love
that
the
was really
X-Files.
good too. So
Fringe, Lost. So all of these things that we're talking about have this kind of central mystery, don't they? This
mhm.
kind of uncovering and discovery about other humans, the society in which they operate, the world in which they live. So when it comes to like your writing and your inspiration, is that something you always explore, or I'm aware that you have a bunch of novels with more coming, right, and
Mhm.
short stories as well.
Yeah.
Is there a theme that kind of runs out through all of yours,
Yes,
or
absolutely.
yeah, let's a little
There,
bit about
there's one kind of red line that runs through all my books, and that's ultimately there's someone who starts out fairly powerless but clever,
that.
and
Okay,
ends up kicking the ever living swear word out of
you
people
can
who
swear,
started
we'll
out
bleep
with
it
a
out.
lot more power than them. So
Mhm.
I'm a big underdog writer. I like to pit my characters against big problems, whether it's
Yep.
forces of nature or forces of government or forces of corporations, and have them just think outside the box and find a way to get where they're going.
Great, great. Okay, that's very interesting. And have you found previously some of these financial elements come in, or is the big slash kind of the first time we're looking at a story where people's money and the economy gets touched upon?
No, I'm one of those annoying intellectuals who's generally had a little bit of an easier time than many people starting things and then had to
Oh,
figure out how to work my way through stuff. But I had a good friend, and we talk about brainy stuff, and he said something that really resonated with me, which was, I don't really care about money, but it's how I keep score.
oh,
Um,
interesting.
and so I think every book I've written accounts for that, where at some point my characters run into limitations because they don't have cash. And then they have to figure out, how do I get some store of value that is going to allow me to live the life that I want to? And I've never written a character that was so wealthy that they just didn't have to think about it.
Right. That's really interesting because in so many books, right, money might just be called like a generic unit of
Mhm.
something. And then, my mind's going straight to Harry Potter, where he's just infinitely wealthy because
Yeah.
his parents conveniently left him so much cash, right? But though,
Bottomless holding of gold.
he's also shown to be frugal. He buys them gifts and it's like, that's your Christmas and birthday for 5 years. And I gave my friend of mine's son some Bitcoin for his first birthday. And I was like, that's Christmas and birthday.
Uh-huh.
um, but yeah, we've got to think about it, haven't we? Because if you want a realistic world that isn't too far from our own, then money it has to be a thing. It has to be a consideration.
Or you need a really damn good reason why it doesn't exist.
Yes, Yes, that's true. And interestingly, and we are here to talk about you, but there are some stories in the new anthology that are of a more fantasy sort of bend
Mhm.
than the sci-fi bend, and we're actually really okay with that because the guys did such a good job. There's two in particular that I can't wait for everyone to read, and the way the writers handle the money element, because
Mhm.
money, or what we think of as money, is sometimes different to a fiat currency,
Yeah.
right? Money could be a bar of gold, it could be a silver coin. And actually, how we think about money hasn't always traditionally been correct. We don't get a great deal of education about money, or certainly we didn't here in the UK.
Yeah.
So it'd be quite interesting to talk about. Do you think there's room for education around money in fiction and in storytelling? There's this big cypherpunk
Mhm.
movement currently that we're all talking about on Telegram, which we really love the privacy. We really love the financial independence. So yeah, how does that fit for you? Do you think you'll be telling more Bitcoin stories in the future?
Probably.
Mm,
I think for me, I don't necessarily call it Bitcoin, because sometimes that feels like you're name dropping a little bit disingenuously for a particular audience, and
okay.
the kind of pseudo intellectual writer in me shies away from that.
Okay.
But it's very clear in the Big Slash, the story I did for the anthology, that
Hmm.
none of the bad things that are described in that could have happened if Bitcoin was the primary form of digital exchange,
Yes.
because there are all elements that are not possible in a truly decentralized network.
Yeah.
And so I think what's most important for my type of science fiction writing, there's golden age sci-fi, which was more about women in bikinis and guys sleeping with aliens with a laser pistol. It was
Yep.
really kind of the tabloid stuff. And then we went through an era where a bunch of very smart people were trying to teach us how to live. I'm
Okay.
thinking Ayn Rand. I'm thinking
Hmm.
Heinlein. And some of that is entertaining if you really want to know about that particular thing. But I think the newer era of sci-fi, before we went grimdark, before we went most recently kind of eco dystopian. The world is
Did
going
you
to end
just do a
tomorrow.
Warhammer reference there with
Oh yeah,
Grim
yeah,
Dark?
yeah, sure.
Because I
Uh,
love that. I'm a huge Warhammer 40K fan.
I like Warhammer too. I'm a big fan.
Amazing.
Dan Abnett's one of my favorite writers.
He's
Um,
tremendous. Yeah.
yeah, he really is. But I think in the intermediate period, there was a phase of sci-fi that I really like, which is we are going to show you how technology works, and you're going to
Mhm.
experience it without needing to know exactly how it is. And we're going to have little snippets of what some writers, when reading me, have called tech porn, which is
Okay.
just I
Yeah.
show you the inner workings of this thing in a way that it's very obvious how it works just by what the impact is. And if you know about it, it's great. If it's not, your eyes can glaze over, and a paragraph later, it'll be done.
Sure. Sure.
Um, yeah.
So my mind's immediately going to two things, right? You've
Uh-huh.
got Frank Herbert's Dune.
Yeah.
Obviously, spice is analogy for money, and you
Mhm.
have the Tailaxu in the later books, and the Ixians, and the.
So it's not actually.
You don't
Uh,
think?
no, no, I don't think spice is an analogy for money. Spice is valuable because it allows prediction, and it allows trade,
Okay, so the
which is
outcome of
slightly
the.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I understand that.
Mhm.
And then what I was going to say about the Ixians is they have this incredible technology. They try to make the navigators obsolete
Mhm.
in later books, and that's kind of obfuscated as
Yep.
well because Herbert's not going to spend all the time explaining you how they fold space time.
Uh-huh.
He's just going to tell you that they do it, right?
Exactly.
Futurama does a lovely sort of parody of this in one
Mhm.
episode if you've seen it.
Okay.
Um, but that's also an analogy. I mean, we said Bitcoin, but we could also say blockchain technology, right? We could say nobody knows how necessarily how an email works. We just know you send an email and an email arrives. Blockchain, you send a coin and the coin arrives, or an NFT arrives, or whatever, right? Similar kind of thing. So you can go and explore it if you want to,
Mhm.
and perhaps the people with that interest are going to have a richer experience.
Yeah.
But it's got to be optional, right? It should still be a great story. And what I see, I mean, I'm aware that we both work in the crypto space,
Yeah.
and a lot of the time, a website or a white paper will talk about the technology itself rather than what the technology enables. And I would say that's bad, right? I don't know what you think, but I
Yeah,
don't think tech for tech's sake is great.
I think when it comes to stuff like that, I think of how you treat those sort of things in writing is the same ways you should treat guns and explosives in action movies, which is the rule of cool should prevail. But if the real thing is cooler than what you wrote, and you're just lazy for not having found out how it really works, then that's on you.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Because I mean, I think the John Wick films are a great example, right? But the scenes where he's in the armories and they actually explain the guns is also cool
Yeah.
because you feel like you're learning.
See, that's the essence of tech porn.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Amazing. Okay. Well, we should get into some John Wick fan fiction. But before we do that, let's talk about 21 Futures. So, clearly you're involved in the collection as a sort of prize-winning writer now, and let's hope and pray to our friends at Konsensus Network. There'll be future collections. I'm not saying there will be or won't be. Hopefully you'd stay attached and enter those as well. But would you tell us a little bit about how you heard about the project and decided to get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was talking to a writer friend of mine, you, and we had exchanged on a number of things. One was a love of writing, which we both have, and two was a love of crypto in general and Bitcoin in specific. And I think even when we consider just crypto itself, a lot of early involvement in projects is down to being part of the community, knowing the right people, so that they introduce you to things when they're coming off the ground, right? And this was not the first anthology. It was there was one before it that was more centered around time travel, which I recommend everyone pick up and see how things go. Especially since there's some authors who are in both, right? So you see progression as well.
And the website does also offer some free great short stories on there. Actually, I wrote one as well, so I'll just quietly plug Satoshi's Ghost. I like to write ghost stories.
Nice.
Anyway, please continue, sir.
And so you brought this up to me and said, "Hey, would you like to write in this antho?" And I think for me, fun projects in writing have always kind of been an intersection of someone saying you could do this and me being at a place where I had the time to do it. And I was between writing a couple articles. It sounded like fun. It wasn't too long. And I like the idea of exploring something in a particular theme, and the brief was very well put together in that sense. And so I just sat down, and I think I drafted it in an evening. So it went fairly quickly. And then did a quick rewrite on it and talked to you about it, and then we shipped it. So definitely worthwhile, and something I wouldn't necessarily have written unprompted.
Yes, and I also happen to know that you've come and joined our community. You've been active. You've spoken to the guys in there. You're aware of our editor-in-chief Phil, who put the submission brief together, who's a fantastic writer. One thing I'd like to take an opportunity whilst we're here, because what's really nice about this project is it's not just for established writers. Like anyone with an interest can get stuck in. I myself personally am probably a kind of middle grade writer editor, and I would suggest you are slightly above me in the hierarchy and the pecking order. So let's take this opportunity to say, DJ, you mentioned that you were able to do this quite quickly. It was quite comfortable for you. Would you have any advice for a writer who was maybe thinking, oh, that sounds a little scary, a little difficult? Just any wisdom for somebody looking to just get stuck in and have a go?
Absolutely. So take 2 sheets of paper. And this is something you do long before you ever want to write. Write down all the stuff that you love. Robot dogs, spaceship popcorn machines, the color blue. You make an infinite list. You just let that stream of thought go through.
That's where your mind goes.
And fill a piece of paper with all the things that just make your heart glow.
Okay.
And then that's the first sheet of paper. And you want to write as much as you possibly can. Like I know if I can fit some puns or a dad joke into a story, it's going to happen, right? It can be the gloomiest, worst moment, but
We
it's
love a pun. We
uh,
love a pun.
and so that's on my one sheet. And the second sheet is keep a running list of all the story ideas you've ever had. And I think if you combine the two, and I mostly keep this in my head at this point, but it's a great exercise to do if you're trying to figure out something meaningful. But if you have the combination of these are the elements, rollerblades with rocket boosters, I want to have that. That leads to Big Hero 6.
Or Jet Set Radio Future on the original Xbox. Yeah.
And so if you have these two things, all the premises that you ever wrote, some of which can be dumb, right? But usually dumb premises evolve into better ones once you have time to chew over, and all the elements you want to brick into that. That's how you can know that you're going to write something that you're going to love, and that passion and affection for your work, even if you're not the best writer in the world, is going to bleed through. And especially if you're starting out and you're just showing it to friends and family, you will at least get a smile because they'll be like, "Oh yeah, this is you.
Nice.
I get
It's
this."
authentic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's incredible advice. Is that from your career as a writer, or did someone teach that to you?
So that's from John Trudy's Anatomy of Story.
Okay.
He starts that, and it's actually something that's good for more experienced writers as well, in which he's essentially trying to say, there's commercial writing, right? We have a theme, we have an audience, we need to crank out as many books in that marketing channel as possible.
Sure.
And actually, the readers don't want you to be too creative; they just want you to give them more of what they want. And if you depart from that too much, they'll stop reading your series. But every once in a while, I think most of us sit down and we say we want to write something really meaningful, and we want to write something original, and that's just us. And so the more of those elements that you write that are personal to your experience and that you're passionate about, and the more of them that you can reasonably and realistically brick into this great, novel that you're working on, then the more unique it's going to be, because no one else is going to have the same lists as you do.
Yeah. That's so good. I love that, and I haven't heard much like that before. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
What I tend to hear is you've got a million bad words, so go and get a job as a copywriter and get them all out, which is what I did.
I think that for most of us, unless you're willing to do 100 rewrites, like I know one guy who did 170 rewrites on one manuscript.
That's
It
insane.
was really, really niche. So it was a question of finding the right door that was going to accept that particular genre and theme. I don't have the patience for that. So what I tell most people, especially people who might have attention deficit disorder like myself, or just don't have that much time available, is just write your first book with the intent of shelving it, and then you won't worry about it so much, and the second one will be better.
Yeah, I have this this piece of advice I give writers, because like Phil, I coach writers on their novels, short stories, and even speech writing, things like that. I love it, And we're going to do swearing now, which is when we say you've got to get to the point where you just don't fuck with it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we're talking about a similar thing. You finish it and then you don't fuck with it. And you got to move on. So many writers. I was totally guilty of this about 15 years ago. Just always revisiting the first one.
Yeah.
Right, it's killer. It's gonna kill you. It's gonna waste years of your time that you don't have. Right. So I love this great advice. But we can't only talk about advice. We know you've got the theory. Let's have some in practice. Would you please consider reading us just a little bit of your story, The Big Slash?
Absolutely. Let's see if I can.
In your best British accent.
No, I won't make people suffer through that. But I will try to also not stumble over my words. So, The Big Slash by DJ Bodden. I was in a grocery store when the big slash happened. I was bagging my own groceries at the self-checkout stand, as is the right of every post-AI human. It was the end of the workday, and near closing time, so the place was packed with tired, oblivious office workers who'd gone from one rat race to another. Some of them were like slow zombies, and some of them were fast, shoving and snarling like they needed to get somewhere other than a honeycomb pod motel. I was uncomfortable and anxious. Some hulking gym bro was just buying a six-pack, was breathing over my shoulder, the smell assaulting my personal space like an uninvited back rub. I just managed to stuff the last of my groceries into a biodegradable bag, gray veggie plastic stretched almost transparent, and I just wanted to get out of there and back to my crappy apartment. I punched the checkout button, swiped my hand over the reader, and grabbed my stuff. "Hey, buddy," the dude with your can said, catching my elbow before I'd taken a second step. I flinched at the touch, turning with cosmic reluctance towards the possibility of a confrontation. But Mr. Peck's too big for his wife beater was pointing at the register. Payment declined. "Sorry," I said without making eye contact. I put my hand back on the terminal, made sure the RFID scanner got a good look at the chip in the meaty part of my hand. Payment declined. Cold sweat dripped down my spine. Have you ever had that feeling? Sudden impotence. I turned to apologize to the man I'd been belittling in my head only moments before, but again, he wasn't looking at me. So all I saw was the back of his head. He was looking at all the other registers, where dozens of other formerly confident and self-sufficient customers searched, helpless, for an attendant. I don't think I ever saw his face. I just remember the smell, sweat and halitosis. It was the first waft of a new world. The big slash had come for us all.
Oh, it's just so real, isn't it? That everyone can imagine that happening.
Yeah.
And the little details, I say to a lot of writers, details and examples always good, helps us relate to it. So the sort of gym bro is just perfect. You can really sort of see it in your mind's eye. But there's something really quite scary about it, because you're not trying to scare us, right? It's not a scary.
Oh, I'm trying to scare you.
Right?
It should feel like a hand gripping the chest bones.
It's gonna get there.
It's
Yeah.
like the only way I could have made it worse was if the guy was on a date.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I think the fear arrives after the disbelief and the confusion, right? So you go in through these motions with the character, because you naturally think, God, how would I react like that? How would that feel? There's something about it, and I'm envious of all the people that are going to get to read that story for the first time, because I've read it several times and I never get to read it for the first time again. But great work, sir. That is tremendous, and thanks you for sharing not only your writing with us, but your wisdom. And we're very excited about the future and our journey as writers. Tell me, if people wanted to read more from you, or hear more from you, or connect with you in some way, how would you like them best to do that?
I would say just go into Google, and I know it's AI and search is dead, but go into Google and type in DJ Bodden, and you will find me, whether it's on Twitter or Amazon or on my website. And feel free to reach out. My email or handles are not hard to find.
Amazing. Thank you. And to anyone listening, you can find both of us chatting away in the Telegram group. Konsensus Network has a wonderful newsletter. There is a YouTube channel to like and subscribe to, and we will be having more podcasts like this, in which I will be tremendously lucky to speak to writers like DJ. And this is great for me, because I'm like writing notes in the corner, trying to steal all the knowledge. But in the meantime, because we won't take much more of your time. Have you got any parting thoughts for, we're in a new year now, it's 2025. Is this an exciting year, a challenging year? What sort of leaving thoughts do you want to depart us with?
Yeah, I think it also gets into a little bit why I got into writing, which is, there's a couple different types of animals that we keep as companions. Some of them are kind of like cats. They mostly ignore you and they want you to feed them. Some of them are like small dogs, where they want attention and they jump around a lot.
Are you saying this because you heard my cat come in a minute ago?
Oh, no. But
he actually did come and say hello.
And then you have working animals, like a German Shepherd. If you don't put it to work, will get depressed. And I'm like that, where you need to stick the weighted vest on me and take me for a walk, or things are going to go poorly. And writing for me is like an infinite sump in which I can pour work. It's a little bit like Bitcoin, where the amount of work required to make progress just scales with the level of activity of the network.
Difficulty go up.
Yep, exactly. And so 2025 for me is going to be as challenging as every year, which boils down to how much effort can I put into something in order to progress at the rate I want to.
Yeah, amazing. I mean, you speak with the confidence of a man that knows himself extremely well, and that's good. You've done that discovery, right? And I think that exercise you talked about earlier is going to help writers really go into that discovery mode. Like you're a detective at the beginning of a case. What can I learn about me? There's that thing, isn't there, called the Johari's window, the known knowns, the known unknowns. There's a lot of psychology that goes into this stuff, and I'm sure we could both talk about it for hours on end. Absolutely. But let's stop for the sake of our audience. DJ, thank you so much. We're going to say goodbye now, but I look forward to our continuing conversations, and thanks again.
Likewise.
Take care, mate. Bye-bye.